No, Mark, we're on time. Malcolm, Quentin, and Finn, please.
Messaging from
Kia ora koutou. We're very pleased to be able to pass a few comments on the annual plan, just to remind everybody or to let everybody know who we are. We're a network of community-based catchment groups. There's over 25 groups now along the river. We see ourselves as a community voice for the river, and we really want to promote the regeneration of the environment along this really special treasure in South Christchurch. The first thing we wanted to comment on specifically was the Lower River Guidance Plan. We've been involved in this for quite a long time, and it's really great to see funding supported, committed to this. We've got planning underway, and we think that the rejuvenation of the Woolston Loop in particular, which is kind of, as most of us know, a fairly heavily industrial area, it's going to have significant benefits for that ecologically sensitive part of the river. And at the same time, we see different units within the council working together, which we think is a very good thing.
We're taking this opportunity just to remind you, as if you need reminding, that sediment is the biggest issue for the river. I know that the Port Hills plan is underway and it's being written, but I guess our message is it couldn't come quick enough. And we'd like to be involved. We intend to be involved, but it's taken quite a while before we can get to that point. And of course, once we have a plan, it's going to take quite a lot of commitment to get sort of landscape scale revegetation going on the Port Hills. So just a reminder that that's where we're heading, and it's going to take some commitment. And just under the general topic of biodiversity, it's obvious from the LTP that there's a greater awareness of the importance of biodiversity in the council, and for that, we're appreciative. Although we haven't seen a lot of action that we could say says things that are improving. Pest plants in particular remain a considerable risk, and the coordination of the whole biodiversity response is the important part that we look to council for. So many aspects to that. We've made some recommendations in our submission, but that whole coordination thing of making the whole council and the community work in the same direction is very important. A part of that is the urban forest planting, which we think is excellent, and we're very supportive of it, especially that along the river corridor, and we're certainly doing what we can to make that work.
Yes, this slide is really talking about the improving urban waterways and urban stormwater detention and treatment retrofit programs. Bit of a mouthful. And we really just want to underline their importance. Our rivers and streams are natural infrastructure. They deliver a range of ecosystem services, reduce flooding, and so on. And we'd really like to see those programs recognise that and prioritise naturalisation rather than this just replacing existing concrete channels with new concrete channels to move water as fast as possible, because that just results in flooding downstream. And we're a bit concerned with the initial proposed quantum of the spend, particularly in regards to the retrofit program. This year, the proposed spend is $5,000. I'm not sure how much you can do with that. So we'd like to see the more impactful years of the program brought forward and the overall budget increased. And the Climate Resilience Fund. So we broadly support the proposed fund policy, but we've made some suggestions on changes and clarifications. So the big one is that the policy as drafted suggests that the fund should be spent on implementing adaptation plans, which makes sense. But at the moment, the adaptation planning process is primarily focused on the coastal hazards rather than inland hazards like river flooding or fires on the Port Hills. So we'd kind of like to see a commitment from the council that adaptation plans will be developed for those inland hazards, and then that those will be eligible for funding from the new resilience fund. We support the exceptional cases qualifier, but we'd also like to see the scope widened slightly so that if a community group or similar organisation such as Papatipu Runanga develop a adaptation plan, the fund can be used to contribute towards that. And then finally, just on the 30-year reserve period, we support that the fund needs to accumulate over time. But that doesn't mean that adaptation action overall should be deferred for 30 years. Climate change is a problem now. 30 years wouldn't be doing future generations or current young people any favours.
And I just want to finish with thanks to all the staff and councillors, including everyone here today. I think over my time with the OHRM, we've seen a measurable increase in the relationships between our communities and especially the frontline community rangers. And, you know, we've had very heartened by the response we've received from the community boards in the area and the councillors. And I'd just say it's much appreciated by not only us on the OHRM committee, but also the people out doing the planting, and you know, that we're able to communicate that to them. I think it's important that people see this at a time when you know, confidence in local government sometimes wavers, but this is an area where I think it's a very positive interaction, and we hope that this will continue. So.
Thank you. Yanni, please.
Thank you for your detailed submission. Just have one question about the kind of retrofitting of the treatment facilities, like the filtration systems. I'm just aware that we spent a lot of money in Bells Creek with putting lots of stuff in, quite expensive rather than natural, but mechanical. Have you looked at the benefits of those interventions versus the naturalizations? Or have you got a sort of preference around the mechanical versus the natural?
We haven't. We've been hoping that the council might come up with some research to show the benefits of that system. There was talk of there being a research project. I haven't seen it. We'd obviously prefer natural, but there isn't a lot of space at times. So, you know, sometimes you just have to do what's the best that you can. A mixture of both would be great. There's some very novel underground filtration systems that can be retrofitted these days. But yeah, they are not natural.
Tim, please.
Yeah, thank you. And just thank you for acknowledging our staff. I suppose at times they feel like the piggy in the middle, so they do really try. So thank you very much. And I know you guys work closely with them, and it is getting better. Nothing's perfect, and it's always a journey. So thank you very much.
Celeste.
You talked about the urban waterways budget. I've missed the quantum that you said that's currently in there for naturalising it.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned the quantum for that specific program, but the retrofit program was $5,000.
It's only $5,000 for the retrofit.
That's my understanding.
So, what did you have an idea of what you think would be, or I guess we can get staff advice on that, but obviously 5,000 isn't going to get you much.
It goes up to 1.9 million in 2 years, so that would be nice.
Okay.
I'm sure it's to do with investigation.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. The stormwater basins we've got at the Adventure Park and Eastman Basin, Sutherland's Basin, which are cutting off the top end of the runoff. It captures it before it gets to the river. Are you noticing that the river is better up the higher reaches than it was with all the work that we've done? Because we've probably spent the thick end of $200 million.
Well, our understanding is they were primarily for flood control, and that obviously is a key objective. We have a concern that, in fact, we've seen maybe an unintended consequence in terms of sediment being, instead of a large flush event that we might see for a flood, we're now seeing the release of the water over several days and the river is brown, and then we have another rain event, and then we have the ponds having to be emptied ahead of that, hold on, and then emptied again. So we are seeing, unfortunately, we don't have much of a baseline. We do have a concern that the main stem of the river is probably got a higher sediment load after the use of those basins, but we've thought about ways to research that, and we've asked around. Anecdotally, that appears to be our impression at least. So we are a little concerned it may have had an unintended consequence.
Because one of the things we were a bit concerned about after the Port Hills fire, when large areas got stripped of vegetation, then it rains, and go, holy hell, it's all going to be turned to custard. But we did go in there, and I can't remember how many, there's lots of cubic metres of silt we took out of those ponds, which would have normally ended up in the river. So it must be making some sort of difference.
Certainly the grit, the heavy stuff comes out.
Yeah.
But that's more of a sediment issue. But in terms of what the fish and other life in the river see, if it's cloudy, it's still a stress on them, and that's the issue.
No. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming in. That's good. Okay. Mark, here he comes.